Hi everyone, it's Chelsea from Smoldering Serpents, and Gracie apparently. Welcome to the third video of the Meet Our Snakes series. This is part 2 of the North American rat snakes. Like I said, we have a lot of North American rat snakes, so I had to split it into 3 parts. So this video is going to feature our white-sided black rat snakes, as well as our one yellow rat snake. So not as much variation in this one as some of the other videos, but it's a really great group. The white-sideds are some of my favorite snakes. We did have 6 of them. We had my favorite girl, Tundra, unexpectedly and rather suddenly pass last spring. So I did still include her because she was a very special girl to me, and it just doesn't feel right doing a white-sided video without Tundra. So yeah, I'll show you all of them. The rest of these videos should be posted in fairly short order. I'm only waiting on one snake, actually in that cage right there, Sterling. Dog hair flying everywhere. Sterling, our male neotropical bird snake. I'm just waiting for him to shed, and then that will be the very last snake that I have to get footage of. So we are just about done with the filming, and I should be able to post these videos pretty quick succession. So, without further ado, let's jump right in. Okay, so first up we have our sort of famous girl. This is Bug. You'll notice Bug's face looks a little bit yellowish. I gave her a meal that had some calcium powder on it, as we usually do for mothers as they're recovering from laying, and she decided to make a huge mess of it, so I tried to wipe it off, but she's also kind of going into shed here, so Bug's looking a little bit frumpy for her close-up, but still gorgeous, obviously. So Bug is a 2020 girl, and usually when she's at her optimal body condition, she's about 600 grams. So she's about a mid-sized rat snake. You can see she's still pretty thin here from laying. This year was her first clutch, and she did amazing. She kind of went above and beyond. She was a bit of an overachiever there. She laid 15 decent-sized eggs. So she really kind of went a little harder than she had to with this, and she's taken a little bit to bounce back, but she's doing well. She's strong. She's recovering nicely. It's just going to take her a little bit to put that weight back on. But yeah, so Bug, if anyone remembers, well, I know some people remember, but a little reminder. So we got Bug when she was a couple days old, and you know, it is far too young to get a snake at that age, but this was from a friend, and we are obviously well experienced with starting fresh hatchlings. So we took the risk of taking a baby who has not eaten yet. Unfortunately, the issue with Bug wasn't actually getting her to eat, it was getting her to keep her meals down. So she had a couple regurges there, couldn't keep anything down really, and I was really worried about her. But we tried some things. We rearranged her enclosure, we provided different types of heat, and we did eventually find something that worked for her, which was to put her in a tank with fairly warm overhead heat from a halogen bulb, and she seems to be a bit of a basking girl. She doesn't so much now that she's an adult, but as a baby she really needed that overhead heat. That's really the first and only time we've ever had that issue with a baby, but, you know, Bug she needed to be special, and she continues to be special. She's a very sweet girl. She's definitely the most sassy of our white-sideds as a baby, and now she is wonderful to handle, but to get her out of the enclosure is a bit of drama. And here we have our other white-sided girl. This is Elara. She's also a 2020 girl. You can see she looks a little bit more filled out than Bug, even though they both actually laid 15 eggs, roughly the same size. But this was Elara's second clutch, and, you know, some females just take it differently. Elara has bounced back for both of her clutches now, both years in a row. She's bounced back incredibly quickly after laying, so, you know, we take that into consideration when deciding how often to breed them. We take into consideration how much do they put into their clutches, how quickly do they bounce back, how strong are they in the weeks and months after laying. So Elara is a tank when it comes to egg laying. She's always been a really robust girl. You can see her beautiful white sides are nearly perfect, with just a couple cute little freckles there. Elara, when she's in her full form, when she's all filled out, is usually about 700 grams, so she's a touch bigger than Bug, which isn't surprising. You'll notice that Elara does look pretty different from Bug, and this is kind of, I've talked about it briefly in a couple places where there seems to be different types of white-sideds, and I don't know if that's just from different lines of them or from the fact that white-sideds originated in Maryland in what was called black rats or eastern rats. Now the range maps are getting a little bit fuzzy, and there was both unintentional and intentional hybridization with gray rats or central rats. So, I'm not sure if the hybridization is playing into this, but you can see that Elara's face is much meatier. The pattern looks different, where Bug is more silver-tipped. Bug has more of that typical dark black pattern. And here you can see Tundra. Like I said, she unfortunately passed last spring. And Tundra was easily my favorite of the group. I have no shame in saying that. She was one of my favorite snakes in our entire house. Very outgoing girl. We got her as an adult along with her mate Caspian. They were both 2017 animals. Tundra was usually about 900 grams, so she was pretty large, especially compared to our other girls. She only ever laid one clutch, and only one egg out of 16 went the distance. So she only ever had one hatchling with us, and we did find that hatchling a really great home. But yeah, so Tundra last spring had an injury in her digestive tract that basically caused an extremely fast-growing abscess that by the time we were able to get her looked at, which was so quick after we noticed anything was wrong, it was already basically inoperable. Not really fair to put her body through what she would have needed done in order to have a chance to survive. So we lost her very quickly. Really unfortunate, really sad. She was one of my favorite girls, but I'm happy to still share her with you. She will certainly never be forgotten. Just one of those snakes that lives with you. This is her mate. This is Caspian. Caspian is our biggest white-sided, easily. So like I said, he's a 2017. He usually sits about 1,100 grams. He can fluctuate a bit. He's a little on the thinner side right now. Coming out of breeding season, that's not unusual. But he also just does go up and down with his diet. I haven't really found a diet for him that just keeps him stable at a great weight. So he kind of goes through these phases. But typically he's eating about 2 chicks a week. Occasionally a rat, but I really don't give him too many rats. He's a great boy, super mellow. The white-sided clutch that we got this year, that is from Bug and Caspian, because they come from Bug, most people are referring to them as the Bug babies, and most talking about them in the context of, belonging to Bug. But the reality is this boy is so easygoing and so laid back. He's just such a great snake that I'm really happy to see that a lot of the babies do seem to already be showing more of Caspian's temperament than Bug's. So, he's kind of our quiet boy. He never makes any fuss or drama about anything. He's a fantastic eater. He's a joy to handle. He's a real gentle giant. So I'm really pleased that the babies this year seem to have gotten the best of both their parents. So you can see that Caspian clearly looks like Bug. He is he's that different type again that I was talking about. This type, him and Bug, they tend to have basically perfect white sides, with very minimal, if at all, freckling on their sides. You can see their face shape is more refined. They have a longer, slimmer snout. They tend to have that dark pigment in their eyes, and it is just pigment. There's nothing wrong with their eyes. That dark pigment, though, that gives them kind of a funky look on their eyes there. Both him and Bug have it to different degrees. He has a little bit more. They tend to have very pink blushing in their face. They tend to have a little bit of yellowish coloration right behind their head on their necks. And they hatch out very pink. like see-through basically. And all baby white snakes will to some degree, but Elara's babies do not look the same as the bug babies. They are very, very different even from hatching. You can see Caspian has a bit more color in his tipping. He has almost a bronzy peach color. It's a little more pinkish in person, but you can just see the different look than Elara, which is cool to see. You can also see they want to climb everywhere and anywhere. So this is Shiloh. He is a 2020 boy. Most of our white-sideds are 2020s actually. Shiloh is about 800 grams, so a good bit smaller than Caspian. And you can see Shiloh already looks a good bit different than Caspian does. Shiloh is that other type with the meatier face and more freckling in the sides and just darker pattern along the back. Shiloh originally came to us as part of a pair. He was supposed to be the female, and when we double checked the sex, he was not a female. So the breeder was nice enough to just let us hang on to him, which I'm very happy about because he's actually become a really special boy to me. He was a bit of a slower grower. He's always kind of had the googly-eyed, derpy face, but he did grow into it with time. He's a great example. Him and his brother, Eno, are actually a great example of the fact that most snakes are going to eventually reach their potential, even if it takes longer. There just seems to be, kind of just a max size that they're just going to get eventually. You can either feed them really heavy and have them grow super fast, or you can just let them take their time. And they'll do this naturally too sometimes. It's not always down to diet, which is exactly what we saw with Shiloh and Eno, which is we fed them at the same rate, but there was a point when they were about 18 months old where Eno was literally twice the size of Shiloh. And Shiloh was never thin, really. He just didn't want to grow very fast, and Eno was an absolute monster. They both arrived at the exact same size. They were both the exact same size when we got them. So it's just interesting to see they're full brothers. So, they're, you would expect them to be growing at a similar rate, but that was not the case for a long time. But here we are now with them both being 5 years old, and Shiloh's 800 grams and Eno is 900, and we'll see him in the next clip here. But so they ended up being nearly the same size. Shiloh just took about 1.5 years extra to get there. They both maintained great body condition throughout them growing up, so they just kind of did their own thing, and it was a really interesting thing to see. So you can see Eno does look a lot bigger than Shiloh, but like I said, he's only about 100 grams more. And you can also see the opposite extreme of a white-sided look compared to, a snake like Bug or Caspian, because Eno is the darkest of our white-sideds. And you can see all the freckling in his sides, which personally I love. I really couldn't pick, I couldn't pick a favorite look to white-sideds, which is partially why I have so many. Because I love this dark, high contrast look. But of course, I also really love the silver-tipped, delicate look of Bug and Caspian. So, the variation is really interesting. Eno is a nice boy. He's a little more reclusive in his enclosure. Perfectly nice to handle, but he tends to be pretty quiet and secretive until food time. You can see that big meaty head on him. He has fathered 2 clutches now, and it's crazy. These guys feel like they just arrived yesterday, but here they are, 5 years later, having their own babies. I do get a lot of inquiries about the white-sideds, and as you can see, they're fantastic snakes as adults, and as babies, I love them as well, but they do generally have more attitude than a lot of my baby rat snakes. The calico babies can have a little bit of sass, but it's mostly just kind of show. The white-sided babies, especially, and Elara's babies, they do actually tend to get pretty upset. They are actually angry when you go to interact with them. Of course, they're not actually angry, they're just defensive, but they will bite you. So the babies tend to be a little bit dramatic for the white-sideds, but they do grow out of it really quickly. And of course, there's always exceptions. Pretty wide range of personalities with these guys, same as their wide range of appearances. They vary a lot. Eno's always been super easygoing. Shiloh was always kind of the derpy boy. Easy to handle, but kind of didn't seem to have much going on in his head. And Elara did used to have a little bit of attitude to her. But as you can see, she's calmed down beautifully. Yeah, I'd really say Bug is the only one left of our white-sideds who still has a bit of an attitude when we take her out. She'll musk me sometimes, but the rest are all super chill. This boy was actually a really big surprise. Last year, when Eno and Elara produced their first clutch together, we were expecting some really beautiful high contrast white-sided babies, and out popped some very pink little worms. And it turns out that they are both carrying the albino gene. So we did not know this. So we ended up with a couple albino white-sideds, which we were not necessarily looking for. But of course, you know, it's interesting nonetheless. They were healthy babies. Edoras here, that's his name, he was just super chill from the beginning. Which was a bit unusual for baby white-sideds. He was just easygoing, phenomenal eater, and quite big for his age. So we decided to hang on to him because we really fell in love with him as an individual, and he's about a year old now. He's about 100 grams, which is a pretty good size for a rat snake hatchling, at least with the way we feed them. He's going through a growth spurt right now, definitely. So he's been a really nice guy. You know, we don't interact too much with the public with our snakes, just for security, biosecurity. We don't need to introduce anything to our animals. But if we did, Edoras would be a really fantastic ambassador animal. You can see even as a yearling, he's super chill. He's easy to hold. And he's growing like crazy, so he's going to be fairly big. I'm really excited to see him as he grows up. And last but not least, we have Nera. Nera is our yellow rat snake. Now I have a whole album full of silly Nera pictures that I love to post, but the reality is that I don't handle her hardly at all. In fact, I can't even remember the last time I took her out, but I'm going to guess it was probably about 2 years ago. She's always out in her enclosure, so it's very easy to visually check on her without touching her. She's an incredibly easy snake. She seems to exist on nearly just air. She's 2015, so she's one of our older girls. She's about 10 years old, and she's about 500 grams, and you can see her body condition is great. She's robust, she's super strong. Now this 500-gram snake is eating one very small hopper once a week, which is an insanely small amount of food for a snake her size, and yet you look at her body condition, and she's actually on the upper end of what we like to keep our snakes at, especially non-breeding snakes. So it just goes to show the wild variation in the metabolism of these snakes. And sometimes it just comes down to individuals, sometimes it's the different species, yes, but she is just, I've never kept another yellow rat, so I don't know if that's true for all of them, but I just find it really interesting how she just maintains on such a small amount of food. You can see she's doing really well considering I never handle her. She's a really sweet girl. So that's it for the third video in the Meet Our Snakes series. Next up, I'll be posting the final part to our North American rat snake group, and that will include our Baird's rat snakes and our corns. So that should be up shortly, and in the meantime, I hope you have a great day.